Welcome to Enemy Archaeologist. Today I'll be talking about a rather controversial topic: Hollywood race swapping. With the current controversy that is Ariel from the My Little Mermaid live-action remake being cast as a black woman, it has been asked, what if a non-white character is race swapped as a white character? To which I respond, it has already happened. How, you may ask? I'll answer it here. Warning! Spoilers, history, and politics! Now, Disney has been remaking their movies into live action and CGI since the 2010s, ranging from Alice in Wonderland to Mulan, and most infamously, Pinocchio. Disney's remaking The Little Mermaid. As to why? Primarily because Disney's corporate heads believe that since animation is for kids, then live action is for adults. There's also the fact that these live-action remakes are nostalgia bait, as evidenced by Mulan and Pinocchio. And given most of these remakes, it's a horrible idea. Knowing this, Disney decided to remake My Little Mermaid and give it a race swap. You see, in the original Disney adaptation, Ariel is a white-skinned mermaid. This is true both in the movie and in the animated series spin-off. The latter shows us that dark-skinned mermaids do exist, as evidenced by the character named Gabriela. Now, the Wokies and the Disney Shields are all bringing this up to justify the race swap of Ariel. They go all, see? Gabriela has dark skin, so why can't Ariel? What they fail to realize is that Disney could have made a spin-off remake movie starring Gabriela while still being set in the My Little Mermaid universe. I know that Gabriela is a Latina mermaid. That said, Afro-Hispanics do exist, and so a movie where Hale Bailey can play the role of Gabriela in that remake instead. The idea of having dark-skinned merfolk is not just limited to the My Little Mermaid series spin-off either. What do I mean by this? In 2018, Elena of Avalor, an animated Disney show made for the little kids with a Latina protagonist, had made a short series to tie in with Elena of Avalor called The Secret Life of Sirenas. Much like with The Little Mermaid's spin-off cartoon series, The Secret Life of Sirenas shows us dark-skinned merfolk as well. Another argument people have in favor of the race swap is that redheads are rare in real life. But that is not even an argument. How? Simple. The actress playing as Ariel in the remake is wearing a red wig whenever she is playing the role of Ariel. That's right, Hale Bailey is not a natural redhead, nor did she dye her hair red for the part. Why can't a white actress wear a wig, when you really think about it? Why can't she dye her hair red? Another argument against this remake is that this movie is too drab for a movie which has black people in it. The fact that this is a Disney movie makes this even worse. Compare this to The Proud Family, Cory in the House, and The Princess and the Frog. All three Disney productions have black people in it as main characters, and these three Disney productions are not only very popular among the general public, but are also quite colorful in terms of the color palette. This remake, being realistic, is not an excuse either, because Cory in the House is live action and it's more realistic looking than this. Now, Hollywood race swaps are not a new thing either. In 1997, the film adaptation of Starship Troopers was released, and it decided to race swap the main character. In the original Starship Troopers novel, which was published in 1959 and written by Robert Heinlein, one Johnny Rico is a Filipino guy. He had enlisted in federal service after the arachnids had dropped a meteor on Buenos Aires which had killed so many people, including his own mom. The reveal of his nationality wouldn't come until chapter 13 of the novel. And now I shall be reading the relevant part of chapter 13 here. Enjoy! There was a Mannerheim. Any chance of seeing Carmen? Probably not, but I could send a dispatch and find out. Big ships. The new Valley Forge and the new Ypres. Myrthon, El Alamein, Iwo, Gallipoli, Leyte, Marne, Tours, Gettysburg, Hastings, Alamo, Waterloo. All places where mud feet had made their names to shine. Little ships, the ones named for foot sloggers. Horatius, Alvin York, Swamp Fox, the Rog herself, bless her heart, Colonel Bowie, Devereaux, Vercingetorix, Sandino, Aubrey Cousins, Kamehameha, Audie Murphy, Xenophon, Aguinaldo. I said there ought to be one named Magsaysay. Bernie said, "What? Ramon Magsaysay," I explained. "Great man, great soldier. Probably be chief of psychological warfare if he were alive today. Didn't you study any history?" "Well," admitted Benny, "I learned that Simon Bolivar built the pyramids, licked the Armada, and made the first trip to the moon. You left out marrying Cleopatra." "Oh, that? Yup. Well, I guess every country has its own version of history." "I'm sure of it. I added something to myself and Bernie said, 'What did you say?' 'Sorry, Bernardo. Just an old saying in my own language. I suppose you could translate it more or less, as is, home is where the heart is.'" "But what language is it?" "Tagalog, my native language." "Don't they talk standard English where it come from?" "Oh, certainly. For business and school and so forth. We just talk the old speech around home a little. Traditions, you know." "Yeah, I know. My folks chatter in Espanol the same way. But where do you?" The speaker started playing Meadowland. Bernie broke into a grin. "Got in with a ship. Watch yourself, fella. See ya." "Mind the books." I turned back and went on reading ship's names. Palmilter, Montgomery, Chaka, Hieronimo. Then came the sweetest sound in the world. Shines the name of Roger Young. I grabbed my kit and hurried. Home is where the heart is. I was going home. I just hope everyone loved that part. Forgive me if I had butchered anything in reading Chapter 13 of Starship Troopers. Forgive me if I had butchered any... For context, Rico is referring to the Filipino President Ramon Magsaysay. This man had helped end that massive communist insurgency back in the 1950s by using a mix of public relations stunts and sending the Philippine military in fighting off communist insurgents. In the movie, Rico gets race-swapped into a white guy by the director of that movie, Paul Verhoeven. As to why, it's because Verhoeven wanted to make a satirical jab at the National Socialists. You can see this in the aesthetic of the Terran Federation and how the meteor drop at Buenos Aires is implied to be a false flag. The problem is that it's not working as a satire. Let's compare Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator with Paul Verhoeven's take on Starship Troopers. The Great Dictator was made as a jab at the National Socialists who had taken over Germany 7 years before that movie was released. And it works because it was timely. After all, The Great Dictator came out in 1940. Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers fails at the satire department because the National Socialists were already out of power for 52 years after World War II. There's also the fact that the Terran Federation in the novel is a military meritocracy. This means that citizens can vote and citizenship can be earned by voluntarily joining federal service. This means either going for public service or enlisting in the Federation's military. This therefore meant that only those who have demonstrated that they care about humanity can enter the halls of power, weeding out those who would cause problems in society. In Starship Troopers, this military meritocracy is done as a republic because Heinlein did pattern the Terran Federation from the Swiss model of military service. It can be argued that there weren't any Filipino-American action stars in Hollywood. But that is not an argument because Paul Verhoeven could have simply gone to the Philippines, looked for a young action star who could easily handle a gun, such as Robin Padilla or Ronnie Ricketts or even some random extra who can act, then offer said action star some money, and they shot at representing the Philippines to Hollywood, along with all the fame that comes with it, and boom! You get a good movie and it helps with Filipino representation in Hollywood. This gets better when in the novel, Juan Rico's dad, Emilio Rico, also enlists in the mobile infantry, and the latter learns that the former is still alive. You'd effectively get two Filipino action stars, a young one playing the role of Juan Rico, and a middle-aged one playing the role of Emilio Rico. The latter could have been played by some middle-aged action star like John Regala, the now late Fernando Poe Jr., or the now late Eddie Garcia. Hollywood has a tendency of hiring foreign actors and actresses to play roles for Hollywood films. Zhang Ziyi and Jackie Chan generally come to mind here. It can be argued that it's difficult to do this especially because of the language barrier. But that's not an argument either, as Filipinos have been taught to speak in English from childhood onwards. Yes, the likes of Jenny and Rose from 90 Day Fiancé are not that good at speaking in English. But in the particular case of those two women, it's weird because Jenny had an American fiancé by the name of Larry, who she ended up marrying, and they conversed to each other in English. As for Rose's case, her now ex-fiancé Ed is an American guy, and they had also conversed to each other in English. The whole argument collapses even further when the middle-class Koreans have been able to send their kids to study English here in the Philippines for decades. There's also the fact that Filipinos and Indians are generally the ones that the Americans hire to answer their calls in American call centers. Lastly, you are listening to a Filipino man talk in English. Me. It's not like this is Hollywood's first time running around in the Philippines either. I am of course looking at Apocalypse Now, which was premiered 18 years before Starship Troopers. Apocalypse Now is known for being shot mostly in the Philippines. And of course, there's 90 Day Fiancé. Does this scene of Ed and Rose running around in some market here in Manila look familiar? Let's face it, Filipinos deserve better than Raya, Steven Universe, and 90 Day Fiancé. Filipinos also deserve better than pick-me losers like this pandering to the 90 Day Fiancé crowd. Verhoeven's middle finger at Robert Heinlein had set my country's representation in Hollywood back around 20 years and had comically backfired at Verhoeven's own face. The latter is obvious because the audience for this movie had ignored his idiotic hot take on it. It can be argued that the Filipino film industry can make its own take on Starship Troopers, and I agree on this. That said, the CGI, props, and casting can get this movie to run a very high production cost, and as it currently stands, there is not much demand for this book nor for any adaptations of this book to make the investment for such a film profitable as of this recording. I hope that this Filipino movie take on Starship Troopers can be done one day though. That would be awesome. Hollywood loves to talk about diversity and representation, and yet we're now seeing that they're having problems with it, all because these entertainment companies just choose to pander and virtue signal to various peoples instead of actually making good stories. Hollywood doing race swaps just to pander to people is quite rude to the people whose culture is being represented. I'm not even white and I feel offended by this. If race swapping Ariel is a bad thing, then it stands to reason that race swapping Rico is also a bad thing, right?